Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. WildMax1 here bringing you another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today we're going to be doing a guide on this guy right here, Amius the Lunar Archon. I'll be going over the rewards for the encounter, briefly discussing the basics, and finally getting into each individual form, along with key mechanics, how to counter them, and example champions that are going to help you do so. So with that, let's get into it. So before we get into the mechanics of the fight, let's first talk about why you should definitely not be skipping this boss, and if you haven't started yet, why you should start preparing. Number one reason, Amius the Gallon. Arguably the best champion in Raid Shadow Legends for both PvE and the arena. In order to get him as a reward and get your hands on Amius for your account, you will be required to defeat Amius on hard mode. Second reason to do Amius is Carnage the Anarch. Free mythical that you can earn from Cursed City. Taking down Amius every rotation is going to ensure that you get more fragments and get Carnage on your account faster. He's excellent in PvE and then even better in the arena. And finally, Merciless and Supersonic Gear. Amius drops quite a nice stash of it. Merciless is the best damage dealing set in the game right now for PvE for sure. And Supersonic is great in PvE and then also even better in the arena. These are all the rewards that Amius is going to help you get, so focusing on this boss as early as possible and getting prepared is going to benefit you in the long run. Now, whether you're already familiar with Amius or are just getting acquainted, before we dive into the two forms, we're going to first talk about the basics of the fight. Okay, here we go. So, Amius is found in the Cursed City, as already mentioned. In order to unlock this encounter, you need to find 3 keys that are scattered throughout the Cursed City on different stages. Once you have them all, Amius becomes available. He is a single boss encounter styled after a mythical champion. So he's got a base form and an alternate form. Each of the forms has their own unique mechanics. There are a few passives, however, that are consistent in both forms. You can only fight one form at a time, obviously, one boss, 2 different forms, and the swap between the forms is determined based on an ability called Archon's Ascendance. Now, he will begin with Archon's Ascendance on cooldown, and he will start in his base form. You can see that little indicator right there underneath the boss's health bar, indicating how many turns there are until Archon's Ascendance becomes available for him to use. Upon using it, he will put an Eclipse buff on himself, which will trigger the transformation from his base form into his alternate form. Once Eclipse expires on Amius in his alternate form, he will then switch back to his base form, and Archon's Ascendance will once again be on a 4-turn cooldown before his next Eclipse transformation. Now, there's 2 important things to note about Archon's Ascendance and the Eclipse buff. First is, Amius has a passive that if you attempt to kill him while he has the Eclipse buff on, he will respawn with 30% HP, 50% turn meter in his base form. So while the Eclipse buff is up, you cannot kill him. 2 exceptions to that are if you put a block revive on him or if you have Lydia on your team. So if you are not bringing either of those two to a fight, then be prepared to wait until he's in his base form before you're able to actually go for the kill. Second, and it's so important that I actually bolded it in red over here, is avoid bringing skill cooldown reduction for your team. Anytime while Amius is in his base form that you have a skill reduced on your team, whether that's through refresh accessories or cycle of magic in your masteries or gear sets like Reflex or Merciless or Impulse, or any kind of abilities, like we're talking Kaimar, Yumiko's, his Archon Ascendance ability will also have a cooldown reduced. So it's a very fast way, if you have a lot of skill cooldown reduction, to keep him cycling and going into his alternate form, potentially when you don't want him to, especially if it's something that you're not even realizing is doing that, like a cycle of magic proc. So making sure that you are managing any kind of cycle of magic or any skill cooldown reductions during the Amius fight is key for having predictability and ease in this fight. So now that we have a good grasp of the basics of this encounter, let's look at the first of the 2 forms, and that is going to be the base form. So when you think of Amius in his base form, think of a healer or a support type champion. He's going to be casting massive heals on himself. He's going to be trying to convert any debuffs you place on him to buffs. He's also going to be increasing the duration of buffs on himself, decreasing the duration of debuffs on himself. He's going to be trying to stun your team, with the exception of mythical champions who only get swapped to their alternate forms. This is a way of playing him, trying to incentivize you to go for more mythicals and bring them into this fight. He's also going to have a passive, so he's going to be taking 25% of whatever heals that you have on your team. He's going to be receiving those as well. And finally, aside from the buff that the passive we already know, which is the Eclipse, and the cooldown reduction on Archon's Ascendance anytime that somebody on your team has a skill cooldown reduction. The other major mechanic with this boss is Awakened Champions. So again, Plarium's trying to incentivize you to bring Awakened Champions, focus on awakening your champions. Any champions that you have that are awakened will be dealing more damage and taking less damage. They'll be taking up to 25% less damage at 6-star, and they'll be dealing up to 50% more damage at 6-star. That is consistent for both his base and his alternate form. So other than the Archon's Ascendance and the skill cooldown interaction passive, the big thing you're going to have to manage on the base form is going to be that massive heal that Amius is going to put on himself. And with that, let's take a look at the counters for the base form. So how do you counter massive heals in Raid Shadow Legends? Heal reduction. That is the first counter for the base form, and it is definitely something that you should look to bring to this fight. Heal reduction is going to help completely, especially 100% heal reduction. That is the most important one, and making sure that you have champions that can land it consistently is going to be so incredibly helpful for countering Amius and beating this fight. The other one is having block debuffs on your team. The stun is incredibly annoying, so making sure that he can't get that on your champions is going to be helpful. Making sure to not bring any reduced skill cooldowns, as already mentioned. The Brimstone Blessing is very helpful with Amius. At the end of this video, I'm going to go over a few different methods for how to tackle the boss encounter in general, Brimstone being one of them. And then, of course, higher Awakened Champions, as per his passive, they're going to help you make it a lot easier on you no matter what. So a couple of example champions to bring for this encounter. Obviously, Amius is a Cursed City encounter, so he's also gated by specific conditions. So each rotation you're going to be limited in the amount of factions that you can bring for the Amius fight. So I'm not going to go ahead and list a champion from every faction, but a few that stand out. Venomage Epic brings 100% heal reduction, really good for this fight. Not only does he bring heal reduction, but he also brings poisons, great damage for the fight. Mashald, so good for this fight with the damage that he brings and the 100% heal reduction. And of course, Morrigan, probably the standout champion for heal reduction. She puts it on every turn. You don't even have to worry about it. Just include her, keep her alive, and she's going to make sure that no heals are going out during this encounter. And the last thing that I wanted to mention for the base form is decrease attack. So obviously, Amius in his base form is going to be attempting to convert any debuffs on himself to buffs. So you have to be careful with the timing of it. But if you make sure to land a decrease attack on Amius when there's a 1 counter left on the Archon's Ascendance and he's about to transform, then you should still have a decrease attack up when he switches to his alternate form, which is a high damage dealing form. So that could help you when you're going to have to take that first hit from the next form. But again, timing is going to be crucial for that. So as soon as Archon's Ascendance goes off cooldown, Amius casts the Eclipse buff on himself, and the moon in the background changes to a blood red eclipse, and Amius then converts to his alternate form. Now, while as his first form was all about self-preservation, trying to convert debuffs to buffs, and trying to heal himself, this second form is all about one thing, and that is taking out your team. And the primary way that Amius is going to try to do that is through a single target double hitter that ignores 100% defense and deals more damage for every debuff on your champion that it is targeting. Now, just like with the passive, which exists on the base form as well, your champions will be taking less damage overall and doing more damage to Amius based on their awakening levels. And for that double hitter, you will get less ignore percent defense on it for each level of awakening on your champion that it targets, up to 50% less. So a big difference. Just like in his base form, in his alternate form, Amius will attempt more buff manipulation, but in this case, not on himself, but on your team. So he's going to do a hit converting any kind of buffs to debuffs, and also try to sleep your champions, and also he's going to manipulate the duration of debuffs. So increasing debuff duration, decreasing buff duration. And that any debuffs found on your champions obviously are going to make that double hitter hit even harder. Now, other passives on Amius in this form, other than the awakening ones, are that he will revive with 30% HP and 50% turn meter, as mentioned in the beginning in the basics, when he is killed under an Eclipse buff, and he will be under a Eclipse buff the entire time that he is in his alternate form. Block Revive or Lydia can stop that, of course. Now, Amius will also ignore unkillable, shield, and block damage So that double hitter, there's unfortunately no way to remove that damage fully. He's still going to be hitting very hard, and there's no way to block it. So notably missing from that list, Strengthen and Ally Protect, both useful for mitigating damage from that double hitter. And finally, and this is the big one, this is the reason that you really don't want any skill cooldown reduction on your team, is because whereas in base form, it accelerated the rate at which he would switch to his alternate form because of skill cooldown reduction. In this form, he actually triggers the double hitter every time that there is a skill cooldown reduction, and it hits randomly. So if all of a sudden you have several cycles of magic go off while you're in the alternate form, that could very quickly lead to the end of the run. But there are ways to counter this form, and we're going to look at those right now. The first and most effective way to deal with the alternate form is to make sure that you understand how to create an A1 tank. And what I mean by that is his A1 in his alternate form. So that big ignore defense double hitter can actually be baited out onto a champion on your team. It will be targeting the champion with the least HP. So if you build a champion with high defense, a champion that has high awakening, and a champion that has the lowest HP, that will be the target for his big hard-hitting double hitter. Now, we've already mentioned the importance of heal reduction in that first form because of that max HP heal. The best way, once you've already cycled into the alternate form, to ensure that there's no heal that's happening in the base form is to match up the duration of heal reduction that you put on the alternate form with the Eclipse buff. So if there's 2 turns left on Eclipse, put up your heal reduction for 2 turns. As soon as he switches to his base form, he will attempt to use Lunar Storm, that big max HP heal, but you will still have heal reduction up on him, and he will receive none of it, assuming it's 100% heal reduction. Next up is protected buffs. So Amius will attempt to swap your buffs to debuffs, but if they're protected, can't do any of that. Cleanse, if he does manage to convert any of your buffs, cleanse is going to be really important, especially if you accidentally had a increased defense. That'll become a decreased defense, which could result in a harder hitting double hitter from his A1. Block Revive, as already mentioned, Lydia or Block Revive debuff, very helpful for this form to kill him through Eclipse. And then Regeneration sets. Special mention for this set, specifically for this fight. So good at keeping your champions alive. If you just make sure that your champions have enough speed for the encounter. So in normal, Amius has 200 speed, and in hard, he's sitting at 250. So match him up so that you know that each time that he's using his damaging abilities, at least you're getting a little bit of regeneration healing. That'll go a long way towards helping your team. The other thing I mentioned already was durability buffs. So Strengthen and Ally Protect can help if you, assuming you time it well, they don't get converted or taken away. And then, of course, higher awakening champions, just like in the base form, in the alternate form, are very important, especially that A1 tank. Now, looking at standout champions, again, not going to go through each faction or anything like that, just going to give an example of them. Venom Mage, as already mentioned, for that heal reduction. Doom Priest actually is a really, really good candidate for an A1 tank, just because Doom Priest has a fantastic passive that makes sure that your team is getting heals passively and also a cleanse passively. So you can just make Doom Priest as high defense as possible, low HP, high awakening, and just watch all those benefits for your team. Lydia, of course, the Block Revive, so good on this form. Unique in that way because you don't actually have to land a Block Revive. You just have her on your team, whether she's alive or dead, and then she'll just you'll benefit from that Death Hold passive. And Mithrala Lifebane, special mention for Mithrala for this fight. Poison, a very effective way to bring down this boss and get the HP down, assuming you're managing the boss's HP with heal reduction. And Mithrala obviously has no self-heals, but with a regeneration set, the cleanse she brings, the strengthen she brings, the damage from poisons, all so good for this encounter. So Mithrala is a really exceptional champ that everybody can use, assuming it's the right rotation on Amius. And finally, as promised in the beginning, I want to highlight a few methods that I've seen and that I've used in order to take down Amius. So the first one might seem pretty obvious, but one shot, or basically killing Amius outright before a swap to the alternate form. If you go right now to your Cursed City global rankings and you see the teams that are currently beating Amius within 1 or 3 turns or 5 turns or 4 turns, whatever it might be, there's a common theme there. We usually see ally attackers, so Lady Mikage, Cardiel, Farrakhan the Fat, All those champions are featured, and then usually some really hard-hitting A1 champions. So your Turvalds, your Ninjas, your Toshiros, your Georgids. That is one method, but there's a extremely high barrier to that. Gear requirement is insane, and that's obviously going to be just for the most advanced accounts. Second way to beat Amius is just the standard way. It's just bringing all the right champions, your heal reduction, a good amount of heals, cleanse, revive, turn meter fill, all the contingencies that you could possibly need in that fight if something were to go wrong, making sure you don't bring skill cooldown reduction, bringing some durability buffs like maybe a strengthen or ally protect, and then making sure that you have a good A1 tank. So the only problem with the standard method, obviously, is the conditions in Cursed City. So there's going to be some rotations where you just don't have the champions that bring all those things to the fight in order to take down Amius. So that's resulted in some really creative thinking from some of the members in the raid community in what I'm going to call the Brimstone method. And what this basically involves is taking 2 or 3 champions into the fight and making sure that you cover A1 tank, heal reduction ideally, and then some way to actually damage the boss. Usually that's achieved through Brimstone or poison damage. So for example, if we take a champion like Mithrala, you get her maybe in a 5-star awakening, then you bring her with Brimstone, you bring her with a regeneration set, and she becomes your A1 tank with that high defense, low HP. That's one component of the team. And on the other side of the team, you have a champion also in regeneration set, tankier, who has heal reduction that you can put up at the right moments. And then you slowly whittle down the boss's HP using poisons and Brimstone, and eventually you get the kill. It's not the fastest way, but it definitely works. And there you have it, everybody, the official Wild Max 1 guide for Amius the Lunar Archon. If you found today's guide useful, please consider liking and subscribing for more content in the future. Let me know down in the comments below if there's any other guides or showcases that you'd like to see on the channel. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for your time. Have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.